Hello and welcome back to Toastie Talks, where we're going to talk serious things over some light food. My name is Tegan Taylor. I'm the co-host of the ABC's coronavirus podcast, Coronacast. And over the last, it's nearly been 2 years, Dr. Norman Swan and I have been answering questions about COVID to Australians. And one of the things that's come through is it's not just about physical health, it's about mental health as well. So we're going to talk a bit about the not health-related parts of COVID, and you can join the conversation too by using hashtag Toastie Talks. It's not just going to be me talking today. I've actually got a special guest. He's a fellow Toastie lover and ABC's weather hero, Nate Byrne. He's the one that's been helping you avoid rain on all of your lockdown walks. Welcome, Nate.
Hey, Tegan, a hero? I don't know about that. I'll take it. Right now, I'm just feeling a little bit like a snoozy boy because I've been up since very early this morning, and I've held off lunch so we could do a toastie together.
You're such a legend. Thank you for putting your lunch / probably dinner based on the time that you would have woken up this morning on hold for us. So there's different parts of Australia coming out of lockdown. You're in Sydney. You spent a fair bit of time in lockdown. You're out now, but how are you feeling about it? You feeling good about sort of re-entering the world?
Actually, hold up. We're south. We're in Melbourne. Tomorrow, baby. Yes.
Sorry,
That's okay. Most people
so
do.
You're like on the cusp. How's it feel?
Tomorrow, excited, very, very excited. But also a little bit apprehensive. You know, we've spent a lot of time in lockdown. Sorry, I'm literally making toasties as we talk. By the way, sorry.
OMG.
Yeah, sorry. This is happening live, people. If it goes wrong, you're going to see it for the first time. You'll see me burn some food on national Facebook. Yeah, excited is the right word. There's certainly a bit of a vibe in the air here in Melbourne right now, even though we're still officially in lockdown. The weather's been great. It's going to turn, though, because that's apparently what we do when we come out of long lockdowns. Sydney's weather wasn't too great either, their first day out. So, yeah, I don't know, it's all kind of really, really cool. But
you're really part of people's morning routine, and I'm sure that people sort of write into you asking questions about not just the weather. What sort of mood are people kind of giving to you when they're talking to you about coming out of lockdown?
Getting a bit of everything, really. Definitely a lot of, oh my gosh, we've done so much of this and it is time and I'm really, really, really ready for it. But then also there are quite a few people, you know, who are legitimately concerned. And for several reasons. I mean, some people are like, I haven't worn pants for most of 2 years.
That's the big question.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't had to actually wear shoes for anything other than going out. So, for like exercise sort of stuff. All the way down to, my kids aren't vaccinated yet. Or I've got an elderly parent or somebody who hasn't been able to be vaccinated for medical reason, and that's really scary for them because especially since we're coming out with numbers not really looking that great right now. It's like a legitimate bit of concern out there, and I think that it's warranted for many.
Yeah, and of course, we're going to talk a lot about mental health in today's program. If you're feeling unsure, you can always call Lifeline on 13 11 14. It's on 24/7, and we'll talk a bit more about some specific mental health resources soon too. But Nate, let's talk about this toasty situation that you've got going there because it looks way more gourmet than what I've got here.
It's only because I'm showing off. Normally for me, a toasty is just like. You know those nights when you don't know what you're having for dinner and you go to the fridge and there's just like 10 half leftover things. That's what this is for. Yeah. Although I've got a little bit fancier today. So it's a salami situation. It's about to go under the grill. I'm doing grilled, rather than proper toasted. But I've got a bit of fresh mozzarella under that. A bit of sun-dried tomato tucked in, spinach, a little bit of thinly sliced red capsicum, and Hungarian salami. So it's got a bit of everything, right? It's like fatty and salty and it's hot and
amazing. Well, while you put that under the grill, I am not allowed to use a toasted sandwich machine in this part of the ABC because we're going to set off the fire alarms if we do. So I had to make my toastie earlier. Here's what it looks like. So today we're going to try some of your suggestions. Hundreds of you have posted your toasty recipes on Facebook, which we love. We've got Jody suggesting halloumi and avocado, which sounds just so good. Rebecca likes marmalade and cheese. I'm interested, I'll give it a go. And Glennis has said you've got to use thick sourdough with butter on both sides, which sounds crispy and delicious, so let's get into it. Halloumi, king of cheeses, and then avocado. All right, let's pop it on the sandwich press. Okay, and I'm very intrigued about this one. Again, we've got the butter on the outside, marmalade. I love a bit of sweet and salty together, so I actually think this is going to be one for me, but I imagine that's a polarising opinion. I don't know, maybe Rebecca's onto something. Cheese. Put on that bread and it can join its little friend in the toasty machine. Other honourable mentions of toasty recipes are Carlos said peanut butter and cheese. I wish we had time to try that. And more than one of you said apple and cheese with cracked pepper, which sounds like a pie, which, yeah, maybe we'll try those next week. All right, so I've got two very different toasties here. Let's try one. It's good. I reckon I'll put pepper on it next time. Marmalade time. You know what? That's really good. It's not quite as sizzly as it was when it came off the grill. And I should have acknowledged a country at the very beginning of this. I'm coming from Brisbane, the land of the Turrbal and Yagara peoples, acknowledging the land and elders past, present and emerging. So, Nate, I don't know if your toasty grill is brown to perfection yet. Have you had a look?
Not yet. I have had a look because I'm really nervous about burning it in front of everyone. But it's getting there. The mozzarella, it's starting to look a bit floppy. Oh, and by the way, I'm coming to you from the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation down here in Melbourne.
It's great to be coming from so many different lands across Australia. So while you're waiting for your toasty to keep on grilling under there, Nate, we actually put the call out on social media earlier to see what people were feeling about life in lockdown. And Zoe's here. Hey, Zoe, what sort of messages are people sending to you on the socials?
We put a call out across ABC's social media channels last night, and we honestly have been overwhelmed by the response of emotions and feelings from people ending lockdowns in Melbourne, Sydney and Canberra. Sydney's is sort of underway at the moment. Still, there's quite a number of restrictions in that city and the wider regional area around Sydney. But Melbourne and Canberra have been in lockdown for some time. Melbourne, obviously one of the longest in the world. And people are really ready to leave their houses to get back into the community and into their friendship groups. But equally, there's a large group of people who are very concerned about what leaving isolation means for them. People writing that being immunocompromised makes them feel quite nervous about leaving the home. Other people saying they're worried that their grandchildren aren't yet vaccinated, so whether they should see them or not until that occurs at some point in the future. Other people are going to the extremes of booking international flights. One woman wrote and said her husband was off to London at the end of the year. He couldn't wait. It was part of his business and he was raring to go. And then a bunch of people just saying, let's stick with picnics and outdoor activities. That seems safer for now. And they're a bit worried about getting into those larger, busier places in our cities like shopping malls or theatres or galleries. Just that nervousness about what will happen with the spread of COVID. Will cases increase? And with that, will hospitalizations increase as well? And is it better if you are someone who is unwell, immunocompromised, just to stay low for a bit longer? So mixed emotions definitely across our lockdown cities in Australia, but I think a sense of hope and excitement about what the future will bring. And I should mention here that if any of this is bringing up issues of concern for you, remember that Lifeline is always available 24/7 on 13 11 14. That's 13 11 14.
Thanks, Zoe. Nate, how do you relate to those audience responses that we're hearing from Zoe?
Yeah, it's really, really tricky. A lot of people might not know, I used to be in the Navy, and I was in the Navy for 12 and a half years and spent a lot of time essentially, in an isolation of sorts, where we were like away at sea or I was on deployment somewhere. And coming home and going back into normal life from a period of, being isolated or having, really weird experiences, it can be tricky to come out. Now, the advantage we've got here, of course, is that everybody's been doing the same thing, but not everybody reacts the same way. So it's really important that people find out what works for them and feel free to let people know when they're not comfortable and when something's just not quite the right fit. Everybody is going to want to get out and do stuff as soon as possible, and if you're not ready for it, it's okay to be like, nah, do you know what? I'm going to take it a little bit slower. I'm not rushing out tomorrow. That's just my thing. I think I'm going to let all the hotheads have their go first, and then I'll creep out a little bit later in the weekend.
It's such a good analogy. I hadn't really thought about that as someone who's been deployed and then coming back. There's definitely something there that people are going to relate to, and maybe people will have a better appreciation for what it's like for our armed services. But is there something in particular that you really are looking forward to once lockdown lifts?
I want to go and see family in New South Wales. Looking forward to that. And I also just would really like to have a meal outside of my house that I haven't cooked. Although that said, this is looking good.
Yeah, show us your toasty. I want to see it.
Look, it's done all the meltiness. I'm just wondering, I don't know, I'm going to try and see if I can get a bit of a mozzarella pull on this.
Oh, yeah, show us the stringy
I don't know. I don't know if it'll work, though. Wait, if I'd cut it properly, hold on. I'll
you need to hold it right up and pull it apart. I want it to look like some sort of TV commercial for a bacon hot pizza.
That's never going to happen. No, it's true. It's too
I did see a puff of steam. Very, very nice. Anything you're not looking forward to? Now that I've asked you a question with your mouth full. See, this is part of the live dining experience. When you take a mouthful and the waiter comes up and says, "How is everything this evening?" And you're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa." I'm basically doing that to you now. Yeah.
I think actually I'm not really super looking forward to losing my alone time. It's been pretty cool. I'm normally a pretty busy sort of person. It's been nice to just actually have a little bit of quiet time every now and then. I think I'm going to have to make a special effort to book some in. From now on. Actually, I've been talking to a couple of my mates saying I think I need once a month to have a lockdown weekend. But it's
personal lockdown.
Yeah, just it's quiet, it's at home. Maybe one person, do a fake bubble or something, play some cards, watch some streaming stuff, and just chill rather than being out and about all the time.
I love that. I don't know if you at home are thinking about doing personal lockdowns for your mental health. If you are, make sure you use #Toastie Talks with that. Nate, when you were talking about that feeling of coming back from deployment before, when you're in the armed services, was there any techniques that you used to help you manage that maybe people could be using now? Yeah, absolutely. We generally taught about it, and we were lucky that we, especially coming back from the big deployments, there was always a psychological support, which was great. But it's really a lot about making sure that the way your day works for you, and you're driving the things that you need. So whether that's having a really, really clear schedule, putting aside time for certain activities or for that downtime or whatever, that's really important. And also understanding in yourself and probably having a conversation with yourself ahead of time about where your limits are, what it is you don't feel like doing. And if you figure that out ahead of time, it can empower you to use your voice when you hit that point, whatever it is, to be able to say, hey, no, actually, that's not something I feel like doing. And if you've got that prepped in your head, then it's not quite as anxiety-inducing, I guess, when you do come across those situations. Yeah, that really requires a level of self-awareness that I don't know if we've ever had to cultivate before. I mean, obviously some people have, but at the public level, really being able to know yourself and be able to check in with yourself, it's not a skill that we're always taught when we're growing up. No, but it's an important one, I think, for a lot of people. And even if you're not feeling particularly anxious and all of that, even if, lockdown ending seems like, yoo-hoo, it's great, still having some boundaries, or at least knowing where you might like to draw some lines, is a handy skill to have in life. Yeah, I was just thinking about eating toasties, and I might have a bite of my marmalade
Yeah.
cheese one in a second. But that feeling of, you tune into your hunger cues, you're tuning into your body when it comes to physical stuff. I wonder whether there's something in tuning into your mental health hunger cues, however that might look.
Absolutely. And also recognizing when you've got a need, like just like with hunger, well, I'm doing this, I'm making this up as I go. Just because you're hungry doesn't mean you need to ram food into your mouth like instantly. And also what you shove into your mouth matters, right? So if you've got some emotional hunger cues, maybe being prepared and having a fridge or a plan full of the good stuff might help you avoid some of the bad stuff.
I'm loving this analogy. I feel like there's a book in it. We should write it together.
I'm on board.
We were talking about re-entry anxiety. It's actually a thing. And ABC News actually did an interview about it recently with someone more qualified than both you or I, Nate. So let's take a look at that.
Anxiety is 100% normal. Anyone who doesn't feel a sense of anxiety about picking up some of the activities and the habits that we've not been able to do for the past few months probably isn't paying very much attention. It's absolutely normal, and so it's really when those feelings of anxiety get in the way of doing what we want to do, or they persist long after the activity's gone. That's when you need to get some assistance with it. The pandemic has taken a toll on everybody in all sorts of different ways. So many people are feeling burnt out, not necessarily because of the impact on their work, but for other reasons, whether there's been an economic toll, whether the challenges of working from home and homeschooling at the same time, or whether it's the disruption to social connections. These things are also going to have an impact when a person returns to work. So employers should appreciate that their employees are carrying some level of stress and emotional baggage as a result of what they've been through during the pandemic. And taking a long course and providing adequate supports and opportunities to talk for employees, I think will go a very long way to helping people to return to the workplace.
That's such an interesting insight. And we've actually got someone else here to talk about mental health side of things in even more detail. The CEO of Reach Out, which is specifically aimed at people under the age of 25, is Ashley de Silva. Welcome, Ashley.
Thanks, Tegan. I'm coming in from Gadigal land here in Sydney. Great to be chatting.
And you're looking at younger people. What sort of messages are you getting from people who are under 25 about this, re-entry anxiety, coming back out of this lockdown cocoon?
Very interesting. It's actually really consistent with the comments you're getting kind of nationally across age groups. And that's really that there is a mix of emotions for people. And I think, it's for all the reasons we've discussed, but also one of the kind of hallmarks of COVID is that life in the world as we're kind of used to it just isn't the same. And in some ways we've become so used to living smaller versions of our lives that it's actually quite an adjustment, just as it was when restrictions came in. And I think a lot of the rules that kind of applied then apply now in terms of being able to check in with yourself, respect the fact that you might not be feeling as excited as your mate, hugs might not be where you're at yet. A lot of the things that Nate spoke about, I think are really relevant for young people too.
And it's not, the lockdowns have mostly been in big cities. Of course, regional areas have been impacted as well. But is there a difference in the way people are feeling in big cities versus the regional and rural areas?
Not so much in the states that I think have been really impacted by lockdowns already. And, we actually at Reach Out released some data recently that showed in regional areas the mental health of young people during this period has really not fared well. And particularly some communities in Australia have had, the experience of bushfires, droughts, and then COVID. And so I think it's fair to say kind of the base levels that we're all kind of coming back into this from are not necessarily as high as they were previously.
Yeah, and I think about the sorts of things that COVID has done. No travel, it's been hard to study, it's been hard to find work. The sorts of places where people who are younger work are often hospo jobs and that sort of thing. It feels like maybe it's disproportionately affected young people.
Oh, look, I think it has. And, one of the things about that stage of life, particularly, is that there's a lot of transition. So particularly for young people who may be finishing school and maybe have started to look to enter the workforce or even start university. There are these kind of key moments in our lives at this point where this level of disruption and turbulence has been really tricky, and really kind of disrupted a lot of the milestones or rites of passage that people normally kind of move through. And I think your point there around employment and, casual workforce, hospitality, etc., is absolutely borne out in the things we've heard from young people also.
So if people are struggling, do you sort of have some handy, practical tips that people can use to help navigate? It's going to be a funny little re-entry process.
Yeah, it is. And I think the thing to do here is just to kind of, as we've spoken about, actually check in with where your level of appetite is for re-entry. If you're comfortable with it, great, go for it. But if you do start to kind of recognize in yourself that actually there are these nerves, or these feelings I've got that are making me more cautious, understand that that's completely fine and frame your life around where you're at right now. So as I said, go at your own pace. Put in boundaries that work for you in terms of the social catch-ups or the environments that you're comfortable, and don't kind of get stuck thinking, oh, everyone else seems to be loving this. What is it that is wrong with me in terms of feeling a little less confident? And if you're finding that the symptoms are kind of more problematic, then also it's a good idea to seek support too.
Sure. And we'll put some numbers up in a minute, including to reach out. But you also support not just young people, but parents and people who support young people. Any tips for older people who might have a young person in their life who they feel like might be struggling?
Yeah, a good tool that we've heard that's been really handy during lockdown, I think, is this idea of a wellbeing score. And we've done a lot of work with this for young people, and they tend to like it because it's essentially a shorthand for parents and people in their life to check in with them. So rather than kind of asking the big question of how are you going and what is it that's going on with you, which changes from day to day, and sometimes the answer is heavier than we've got the words to articulate. This idea is that you kind of go on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you at? 1 being not very great, 10 being really good. And it's a way then you can kind of build that into your routine. And for a parent or a carer, you can listen to trends. So you can kind of see when the score's going down and staying down, or whether it's just kind of down and back up.
Yeah, that idea of feelings that are heavier than words is really, really relatable, especially at that time of life. You're not always great at articulating just how hard it is. What about social networks that aren't parents? Sometimes when you're a young person, the last person you feel like being really vulnerable with is your mum or dad, even though, you think that's a really close relationship.
Yeah, it's true. And in fact, the places young people are most likely to turn when they're having difficult times are the area they're online, which is where reach out is, to their parents or to friends. And I think, one of the things I'd offer here is that Reach Out runs a really beautiful community online of young people where you can kind of ask questions and share experiences of one another, without having to kind of, have it be someone who's really close to you in your life. And that can sometimes just be all that you're looking for, is to just actually kind of say, hey, I'm actually feeling this way at the moment. How are others out there going?
How about you? How are you going? You're in Sydney. You've been out of the really hard lockdown for a couple of weeks now. Is it feeling good?
Yeah, I mean, I've stepped out, but not in kind of a wild way just yet. But I've certainly, it felt quite weird, for instance, even just sitting down in a cafe and having a coffee in that first week, which I did do. But, picnics are still on the go for people who aren't looking to get back into crowded spaces. But I've been enjoying the mix. But a little kind of still reflective on just how I hold some of the space that I've also enjoyed, kind of in that quieter life over the last while, and kind of retain that as we go forward.
Ash, thanks so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you.
So that was Ashley de Silva, who's the CEO of Reach Out Australia. If you want to look in the pinned posts on our social media accounts, you can see helplines and whatnot there. And Nate, coming back to you, ABC Every Day has actually put out some really good advice that I'd love for us to have a chat about just how to manage this re-entry anxiety. They say really fantastic things like adjusting your expectations, taking it one step at a time, focusing and acting on things that you can control, and sort of making plans you feel comfortable with, seeking help early and that sort of thing. Do you have a favourite among those tips that's helping you navigate this?
Having conversations, I think, because that does a couple of things. Not only helps you figure stuff out, but also helps you tell other people where you're at. for example, for me, like the way my brain works, we're still in a pandemic, right? So even if we've got some relative freedoms on the way here in Melbourne, it's still important that we do a lot of the stuff that we have been doing in order to keep as many people safe as possible. So I am not going to be in the club the very first time that it's open, and me telling other people that's the case, adjusts expectations, and then also means that I don't have people saying to me, "Oh, Nate, we're going to the club, Do you know what I mean? Like that two-way conversation helps me deal with things in my head, but also helps other people change how they're going to put pressure on me to do things.
But I also think it helps normalize not just rushing out as well. Like if you're going, well, I'm not so sure about this, but this is what I feel comfortable with, that actually gives other people a space to go, yeah, same. So let's do this. And then you're collaborating on feeling safe together rather than feeling like you're the only weirdo who doesn't want to go out and do stuff like when you should be going out.
Exactly. Yeah, using peer pressure for good.
Yeah, exactly. Peer pressure for good. And then another thing that we do hear a lot about, during lockdown times and also now that we're coming out of them again, is the importance of fresh air and exercise. And I wondered if I think you look like a fit guy. Do you have a routine that you find helps you?
Actually, so my actual routine fell apart, last year in March when we first went into lockdown and when stuff started shutting down. And I found by accident that because, Melbourne, we pretty quickly got into the 5 kilometre radius that you could travel. And it turned out that I live just that much under 5 kilometres from work. So I started walking home from breakfast every single day. And that has now, between lockdowns, being out of lockdowns, everything, that's something that I've maintained. And actually now I'm usually clocking up a good 25,000 steps a day, which is way more than 5 kilometres. But that's because I've just found like being on my feet and walking everywhere is kind of the best thing. Get some podcasts going. You know what I'm talking about.
Podcasts. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, Coronacast is the only one that you need. Just play it on repeat.
Of course, yes. And yeah, just, you get a bit of time with yourself. I didn't even touch my car for, I think it was 9 months in the first, last year. And this year it's been, I could probably count it on both hands, the number of times I've jumped in a car rather than walked somewhere. And it's been really good. I've loved it. And despite the fact that my gym's not been around and all the rest of that, I haven't had any of my personal training sessions, like I'm Chris Hemsworth, essentially. I mean, you can tell that, right? Yeah. So, it's kept me going and it's something I'm definitely going to keep up on the other side, including using mozzarella. And because I figured out the cheese pool trick,
show us the cheese pool, please.
It's just teeth straight. It did work, I promise.
It only works when you're not on camera. The one thing I love about you being a walker is you're never going to get caught in a rainstorm without an umbrella because you're literally a weatherman. There
is nothing worse than being the weatherman and getting wet. So I almost always have a backup at work just in case.
So we're coming out of lockdown. What is the weather going to be like over the next little while? Cloudy with a chance of partying or what?
Has this entire thing just been so that you could get a personalised forecast for the weekend?
Yes. I'm in the western part of Brisbane. Specifically.
Yeah, right, gotcha. No, okay, well, Australia's a big place. Melbourne, I'm not going to apologise because I'm telling you what's happening. It's going to be wet tomorrow night. Just as people wrap up work and want to get out, the rain's going to come down. We've got all this stormy weather going on in the east. Have you copped a couple of those storms that Brisbane's had?
Oh, yeah. The windows were rattling. It was actually really terrifying.
Yeah, it's been kind of wild. This the unstable air in the east that's been causing all these severe storms is sticking around for quite some time. So we're going to see plenty more activity and up further north in Queensland, especially around about Tuesday next week, Monday, Tuesday, we'll start to see a re-intensification of some of the big storms. So yeah, that's going on. If you're up north in the top end or in the tropics, the build-up, you should be getting some relief in the coming week. And WA has a front on Monday. Otherwise, WA is just, I'm a Perth boy. So my fellow Western Australians know the weather as usual.
Well, if there's one thing that rainy weather makes me think of, it's comfort food. So toasty time all the time, I think, folks. And we're going to keep up the Toasty Talk chat keep putting your messages in the chat. And of course, if you need help, there are helplines there, especially Lifeline, 13 11 14. It's open 24/7. Keep sharing your toasty recommendations because we want to keep this going. I really want to have a chance to try that apple and cheese and walnut toasty that someone posted last week. But until then, see you later.